Most people don't realize this, but the greatest prison on earth has no walls, no bars, and no guards. It's built entirely out of memory, out of moments that hurt, failures that embarrassed us, words spoken years ago that still echo in our heads. And somewhere along the way, we start to believe a dangerous lie, that who we were somehow determines who we must become, that the past gets to vote on our future. But let me tell you something that can change everything for you today. Your past has no power over you unless you give it that power. Your past is an experience, not a life sentence. Yet most people live as if a chapter they didn't choose somehow wrote the entire book of their lives. They wake up each day carrying invisible chains made of old memories, old mistakes, old pain, and they call it reality, when in truth, it's just familiarity. Experiences are meant to teach, not to trap, but when the lesson is never separated from the identity, the experience turns into a cage. You might have failed before, been rejected before, hurt before, disappointed yourself or others before, but none of that is a verdict on who you are capable of becoming. It is data, not destiny. Life gives you experiences so you can grow, refine, and evolve, not so you can punish yourself forever for moments that happened when you knew less, had less, or believed less about yourself. The problem isn't the past itself. It's the story you keep telling yourself about it. Stories repeated long enough become beliefs, and beliefs shape behavior. When someone says this is just who I am, what they're really saying is this is the story I practice the most. But stories can be rewritten the instant you decide to stop rehearsing the old one. You are not required to be loyal to a version of yourself that was built out of survival rather than purpose. At some point, survival strategies expire, and if you keep using them, they limit the very growth you say you want. Think about this for a moment. If the past truly controlled the future, change would be impossible. Growth would be a myth. Transformation would be reserved for a lucky few. Yet every breakthrough human story ever told is proof that the past does not get the final word. People rise from poverty, trauma, failure, addiction, and loss, not because their past changed, but because their relationship to it did. They stopped seeing it as a sentence and started seeing it as training. They stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And started asking, how will I use this? The moment you decide that your past happened for you, not to you, everything shifts. Responsibility replaces blame. Power replaces regret. Forward motion replaces emotional paralysis. This does not mean the pain didn't matter. It means it no longer gets to drive. You become the driver again. You choose the direction, the speed, and the destination. Your past can explain you, but it does not have to imprison you. Explanation is not obligation. Awareness is not attachment. You can honor what you've been through without living there. You can learn the lesson without reliving the wound. And when you finally separate who you are from what happened, you step into a level of freedom most people never experience, the freedom to define yourself now, in this moment, based on who you choose to become rather than who you once had to be. Meaning, not memory, shapes your destiny, yet most people allow memories to run their lives without ever questioning the meaning they attach to them. A memory by itself is just a neutral record of something that happened, but the meaning you assign to it becomes the emotional fuel that drives your decisions, your confidence, and your sense of what is possible. Two people can remember the same type of failure, rejection, or loss, and one uses it as a reason to stop trying, while the other uses it as a reason to rise. The difference is not what they remember, but what they decided that memory means about who they are and what life has in store for them. The human mind is constantly searching for meaning because meaning creates certainty, and certainty feels safe. When something painful happens, the mind often chooses a meaning that protects us in the short term but limits us in the long term. We tell ourselves that we failed because we're not good enough, that we were rejected because we're unlovable, that we struggled because success isn't meant for us. Those meanings feel logical in the moment, but once they're repeated, they harden into beliefs. Beliefs quietly shape every action you take, every risk you avoid, and every opportunity you talk yourself out of. What most people never realize is that meaning is not discovered, it is assigned. And if it's assigned, it can be reassigned. The event cannot be changed, but the meaning absolutely can. When you change the meaning, you change the emotional response. When you change the emotional response, you change your behavior. And when behavior changes consistently, destiny changes. This is how real transformation happens. Not by erasing the past, but by rewriting what the past represents. A painful memory does not have to mean weakness. It can mean resilience. A failure does not have to mean incompetence. It can mean growth. A loss does not have to mean the end. It can mean clarity. When you consciously choose empowering meanings, you turn your memories into allies instead of enemies. They stop holding you back and start pushing you forward. The same memory that once caused hesitation can become the source of courage when you decide it proves you can survive hard things. The quality of your life is shaped by the questions you ask yourself about your experiences. Ask disempowering questions and you get disempowering answers. Ask empowering questions and you create new possibilities. Instead of asking why you're broken, you ask how this experience prepared you. Instead of asking why it happened, you ask how it will serve you. Those questions don't change the past, but they absolutely change the future you move toward. When you take control of meaning, you take control of direction. You stop being a victim of memory and become the architect of your destiny. The past remains the same, but its power over you disappears because the moment you change what something means, you change what it can do to you. And from that moment forward, your life begins to move in a completely different direction. Decisions made today are more powerful than events from yesterday. Yet many people live as if the past is still happening now. They replay old moments in their minds, rehearse old emotions in their bodies, and then wonder why their future looks exactly like their history. The truth is, life does not move forward based on what happened to you. It moves forward based on what you decide to do next. Events shape experiences, but decisions shape identity. And identity shapes destiny. Every single day, whether you realize it or not, you are making decisions about what you believe, what you focus on, what you tolerate, and what you pursue. These decisions may seem small, but they are the building blocks of your life. The moment you decide to stop letting yesterday justify inaction today, you reclaim your power. The past can influence you, but it cannot control you unless you keep choosing the same responses over and over again. People often wait for motivation, confidence, or certainty before they act, but those things are not prerequisites for decision. They are the results of it. Clarity follows commitment, not the other way around. When you make a decision, even in the presence of fear or doubt, you send a message to yourself about who you are. That message begins to reshape your self-image, and once your self-image changes, your behavior naturally follows. One strong decision can outweigh years of negative experience. A single choice to stop settling, to stop blaming, to stop repeating old patterns can create a ripple effect that changes everything. History does not vanish in that moment, but its grip loosens. You begin to operate from intention instead of reaction. You stop asking what happened to you and start asking what you are going to create. The reason decisions are so powerful is because they mobilize resources. When you decide, your mind starts looking for solutions instead of excuses. Your body finds energy you didn't think you had. Opportunities you once ignored suddenly become visible. This is not luck, it is focus. Where decision goes, energy flows. Yesterday's events are fixed, but today's decisions are flexible. And flexibility is where growth lives. You may not be able to control everything that happened, but you can control how you respond now. You can decide what story you tell yourself, what standards you set, and what actions you take regardless of circumstances. These choices compound over time, quietly building a future that no longer resembles the past. When you fully grasp that your life changes the moment you decide it must, you stop waiting for permission from history. You stop negotiating with old fears. You stop living as a reaction to what was. Instead, you step into authorship, realizing that while you cannot rewrite yesterday, you can absolutely decide who you become today. And that decision carries more power than anything that has ever happened to you. Identity can be changed in an instant, yet most people treat it as if it were carved in stone by years of experience, habits, and other people's opinions. They say things like, "This is just how I am," or "I've always been this way," without realizing that every identity they carry was once a decision, conscious or unconscious. Identity is not a fixed truth. It is a set of beliefs you consistently act upon. And the moment you decide to believe something new about who you are, your behavior begins to reorganize itself around that decision. Think about how quickly identity can shift in everyday life. The instant someone becomes a parent, a protector is born. The moment someone commits to a cause bigger than themselves, courage appears. The circumstances may not change overnight, but the way a person shows up does. That shift happens because the identity changed first. You see yourself differently, you demand different things from yourself. Your standards rise, your excuses lose their power, and actions that once felt difficult become natural. Most people wait for evidence before they change their identity. But evidence follows identity, not the other way around. If you wait until you feel confident to see yourself as confident, you will wait forever. Identity is chosen, then reinforced through action. You decide who you are, and then you prove it to yourself through consistent behavior. This is why lasting change happens in moments of decision, not in moments of comfort. An identity shift does not require a dramatic event or years of preparation. It requires clarity and commitment. Clarity about who you will no longer be, and commitment to who you choose to become. When you say, I am the kind of person who follows through, who speaks up, who grows, who takes responsibility, your nervous system adjusts to that command. Your mind looks for ways to align with it. You may stumble, but the direction has changed, and direction matters more than perfection. Old identities often formed as protection. They kept you safe, helped you belong, or helped you survive. But protection is not the same as purpose. What once helped you cope may now be the very thing holding you back. Letting go of an old identity is not betrayal, it is evolution. It is honoring who you were while refusing to be limited by it. An identity shifts, everything else follows. Habits change because they no longer match who you believe you are. Relationships change because you no longer tolerate what contradicts your values. Goals change because your vision of what is possible expands. You stop trying to change behavior through force and start changing it through alignment. The most powerful question you can ask yourself is not what should I do, but who must I become? The moment you answer that question with certainty, even if your voice shakes, something inside you locks in. From that moment forward, every action becomes a vote for that new identity. And with enough votes, that identity becomes your reality. Not someday, not after more proof, but starting the instant you decide who you are now. Personal power begins when responsibility replaces blame, yet many people unknowingly give their power away by pointing outward instead of looking inward. Blame can feel comforting because it offers an explanation without requiring change, but the price of that comfort is control. The moment you decide that someone else, something else, or some past event is the reason your life has not moved forward, you also decide that your future is in their hands. Responsibility, on the other hand, is not about fault. It is about ownership, and ownership is where power lives. Taking responsibility does not mean denying that unfair things happened or pretending pain did not matter. It means refusing to let those events dictate your direction. You can acknowledge what happened without allowing it to define what happens next. Responsibility says, this is where I am, and from here I choose. That single shift in mindset turns you from a passenger in your own life into the driver. Blame keeps you stuck in reaction. Responsibility puts you into creation. When you blame, you wait for circumstances to change, for people to behave differently, for the past to somehow fix itself. When you take responsibility, you begin asking different questions. What can I control? What can I learn? What is the next action I can take right now? Those questions generate momentum instead of frustration. Most people fear responsibility because they confuse it with guilt or shame. But true responsibility is freeing. It means you are no longer dependent on external approval or perfect conditions. You don't need someone else to apologize, change, or understand for you to move forward. You give yourself permission to grow, regardless of what anyone else does. When responsibility replaces blame, your language changes and language shapes focus. You stop saying this happened to me and start saying this is what I will do next. You stop reliving the past and start designing the future. Energy that was once wasted. Resentment becomes available for creativity, discipline, and courage. Personal power is built through small acts of responsibility taken consistently. Choosing to show up when it would be easier to avoid. Choosing to tell the truth when it would be safer to stay silent. Choosing to improve one habit instead of complaining about the result. These choices compound, and over time, they rebuild self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence. The moment you take full responsibility for your life, excuses lose their grip. You may still feel fear, doubt, or uncertainty, but they no longer get to decide your actions. You act because it aligns with who you are becoming, not because conditions are perfect. When you stop blaming and start owning, something powerful happens inside you. You realize that while you cannot control everything that happens, you can always control your response. That realization ignites personal power because it reminds you that no matter where you came from or what you've been through, the next move is yours, and that ownership is the beginning of a life led with strength, intention, and unstoppable forward motion.